Welcome to World Prism. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Donald Trump remains a dominant force in American politics, his presence felt in nearly every major conversation about the nation's future. Whether you support him or oppose him, there's no denying his influence continues to shape the political landscape. He sparks passionate debates and divides opinions nationwide, with supporters and critics often clashing over his policies, rhetoric, and legacy. Over the years, Trump's actions, both during his presidency and after leaving office, have led to a series of high-profile legal battles. Many of these disputes have escalated all the way to the Supreme Court, the highest judicial authority in the country. Recently, the court delivered two landmark rulings, one addressing whether a former president can be prosecuted for actions taken while in office, and another examining the legality of the sweeping tariffs he imposed during his administration, which affected global trade and American businesses. These decisions carry enormous implications, not just for Trump himself, but for the very nature of the presidency and the future of American democracy. Understanding these Supreme Court rulings is essential for anyone trying to make sense of today's complex and often turbulent political climate. In this chapter, we'll break down exactly what the Supreme Court decided, what Trump and his legal team argued for, and what these decisions ultimately mean for the country as a whole, from the halls of power to the lives of ordinary Americans. These cases are more than just legal arguments. They have the power to shape the daily lives of citizens, influence elections, and redefine the balance of power in government. The outcomes will spark debate for years to come, affecting lawmakers, judges, and voters alike. The ripple effects of these rulings will be felt in future court cases, political campaigns, and public discussions across the nation. Ultimately, they will help determine the direction of U.S. democracy and the standards by which future presidents are judged. Let's dive into the Supreme Court's pivotal decisions and explore their lasting impact on the nation's legal and political landscape. The Supreme Court stands as the highest authority in the American legal system, interpreting the Constitution and establishing binding precedents that shape the nation's laws. Its influence reaches into every corner of American life, from civil rights to the limits of government power. The court is composed of 9 justices, each appointed for life, a design meant to insulate them from political winds and ensure their decisions are guided by law, not by shifting loyalties or public opinion. Their independence is crucial to maintaining the balance of power. As a check on both Congress and the President, the Supreme Court ensures that no branch of government exceeds its constitutional authority. This system of checks and balances is fundamental to American democracy, preventing any one branch from becoming too powerful. When presidential power is at stake, the court's rulings can redefine the boundaries of government for generations, affecting not just the current administration, but the very framework of governance for years to come. In recent years, Donald Trump's legal challenges have put the court's independence to the test, especially since he appointed 3 of its current justices. The nation watched closely to see whether the justices would uphold the law impartially. Despite the political spotlight, justices are expected to rule on principle, guided by the Constitution and legal precedent, not by partisan interests or personal beliefs. The cases involving Trump's immunity and his authority over tariffs were watched with intense scrutiny, as their outcomes would help define the true limits of presidential power and accountability. The stakes were enormous. Could a former president be held criminally accountable for actions taken while in office? The answer would have profound implications for the rule of law and the future of executive power. Another critical question loomed. Does the president have the unilateral authority to impose sweeping economic policies, such as tariffs, without congressional approval? The court's decisions would impact not just politics, but the economy and global relations. These were not simply Trump's battles. They were fundamental tests of the very structure and resilience of American democracy, with consequences that would echo far beyond one presidency. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's decisions in these landmark cases would set the rules and boundaries for all future presidents, shaping the nation's path for generations to come. The first major question: can a former president be prosecuted for crimes committed in office? Trump's legal team argued he had absolute immunity for official acts, claiming prosecution would cripple the presidency. They insisted his actions after the 2020 election were part of his official duties and should be shielded from criminal charges. Prosecutors and legal scholars countered that no one, not even a president, is above the law. They argued immunity for criminal acts would turn the presidency into a monarchy. Lower courts rejected Trump's claim, but the Supreme Court had the final say. The justices had to balance presidential freedom with accountability. Their decision would set a precedent for all future presidents. The nation waited to see if justice would apply at the highest level of government. In a landmark decision that will echo through history, the Supreme Court rejected former President Trump's sweeping claim of absolute immunity from criminal prosecution. The ruling was highly anticipated, drawing intense public and media attention as the nation waited to see how the highest court would interpret the limits of presidential power. The court declared in clear terms that no one, not even a sitting or former president, is above the law. This principle, rooted in the very foundation of American democracy, was reaffirmed for all to see. However, the justices drew a careful line. While some official acts performed as president may be protected from prosecution, private or non-official acts are not shielded. This distinction is crucial, as it separates the duties of the office from personal conduct. The case was sent back to the lower courts, which now face the complex task of determining which of Trump's actions were part of his official presidential duties and which were private acts outside the scope of his office. This pivotal decision clears the way for criminal proceedings against Trump to move forward, potentially leading to historic trials and legal scrutiny of a former president. The ruling sets a powerful precedent for the future, making it clear that presidents are not immune from accountability for criminal conduct and must answer to the law like every other citizen. It reinforces the rule of law, limits the reach of presidential power, and upholds the checks and balances that define the American system of government. Future presidents are now on notice. While they have the freedom to govern, that freedom does not extend to breaking the law or abusing their office for personal gain. The decision marks a defining moment for American democracy, sending a message to the world that the United States holds even its highest leaders accountable. Trump's legal battles are far from over, but the shield of absolute immunity is gone. The nation now watches as the legal process unfolds, shaping the legacy of presidential accountability for generations to come. The second Supreme Court case focused on Trump's signature economic policy, tariffs. Trump imposed sweeping tariffs, arguing they would protect American jobs and industries. He used emergency powers under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, declaring a national emergency in American industry. The tariffs raised prices on thousands of products, hurting businesses and consumers. Job growth slowed, and manufacturing jobs declined despite the policy's intent. Companies sued, claiming Trump overstepped his authority by using emergency powers for broad economic policy. The lawsuits reached the Supreme Court, which had to decide if the president could use emergency powers to reshape trade policy. The outcome would determine the limits of presidential authority over the economy. The stakes were high for Trump's legacy and for American businesses. The Supreme Court ruled against Trump's use of emergency powers to impose sweeping tariffs. The justices found he exceeded the authority granted by Congress under the emergency law. The court clarified that emergency powers are for true crises, not long-term economic policy. The declared emergency didn't meet the legal standard. The ruling means the tariffs could be reversed, and companies may claim billions in refunds. Consumers are likely to see lower prices as a result. The decision reasserts Congress's primary role in trade policy. Other tariffs remain, but the president's power to act unilaterally is now limited. The ruling strengthens checks and balances between the branches of government. It sends a clear message. Presidential power, especially over the economy, has limits. These Supreme Court rulings mark a turning point for Trump and the presidency. The rejection of absolute immunity means Trump and all future presidents can be held criminally responsible. The decision on tariffs curtails the president's ability to control the economy without Congress. Trump now faces the prospect of criminal trials and the unraveling of a key economic policy. Politically, these rulings force him to adapt his strategy and messaging. For America, the decisions reinforce the strength of democratic institutions and the rule of law. The court has clarified the limits of presidential power, ensuring no one is above the law. These moments will shape the presidency and American democracy for years to come. The legal and political landscape has shifted, demanding accountability and collaboration. The future of the presidency and the nation will be defined by these landmark decisions.